Hi bagmakers! This is the Backventure, an adventurous pattern for advanced sewers, but don't be afraid. Together we will make this work. Step by step, I will guide you through the whole process on how to prepare and how to sew this amazing anti-theft backpack. But before we actually start, let's have a detailed look at this project. This is the front, and on the front you have a big front pocket. It has a slip pocket as well. If you like, you can add a snap here. This is not included in the video, but I made placement on the pattern pieces. This is the actual front pocket. It's quite roomy, and this is a top zipper pocket. It goes down until right here. So the zipper does not lay flat, it sits on top of the back. On the top you have a handle and two D-rings attached. You could also add a strap or any key rings or anything you like. On the sides we have side pockets. And now let's look at the most pretty thing, the back. I really like how the back turned out because it's an anti-theft style. You do have your main opening here in the back. The straps are connected to the back, and we attach two zipper pulls and open up this flap. In the flap you have an additional zipper pocket and a slip pocket. So there's a lot of binding in this project, but don't be scared of binding. I've also attached the link to the binding tutorial if you'd like to dive deeper into this. Okay, what do you think? Can we do this together? I really think we will make this happen, so let's prepare our pieces and our pattern. Download the ebook and open it from Adobe Reader. Do not print it from the browser. Then go to print, and of course before you download, make sure you've downloaded the right format. It's either DIN A4 or US letter. Only print the pages that you need for the pattern pieces and check again if your format is correct. Then select your size and scale it to 100% or actual size. That's really important. And then you're ready to print. When you've printed out your pieces, please check the box, the control box on the paper, if the size is correct. These are the fabrics that I've used. I've used the regular quilting cotton and an outdoor fabric, like a waterproof canvas for my mane. I've also used some faux leather for the bottom and the strap cover. And when it comes to interfacing, I've interfaced the cotton lining with G700 and Decophyllite for the main pieces. The bottom piece I've used the heavy version of Decophyll. Compared, you can see the Decophyll is thicker. For some pieces I've used the H250, but only for the interior slip pocket. We do need some zipper tape. We do need webbing. I'm sorry, I missed that word. Some rivets. And for hardware, we need two sliders and two square rings. We do need two D-rings and 5 zipper pulls. In addition, we do need a lot of bias tape for binding. Let's start making the front. These are all the pieces that we will need for the front. So we have our backing from the front with the slip pocket. It's the interior slip pocket. This piece is fused with H250, as you can see. We do need the front pocket pieces. So we have the C-piece, main and lining. And we do have a slip pocket. I've used some H250 on this one too because you fold it in half, so you just need to cut out like half the piece. So you use the dotted lines. Make sure that if you use interfacing on it, that is connected to the piece we will sit in front, not in the back. We do need the gusset pieces for our zipper. And then when it comes to the top zipper pocket, we do need 4 tabs, 2 from lining and 2 from main. We need a zipper and the 2 funny looking mushroom kind of shaped pieces. They are different in size slightly, but they are different, so pay attention on if it's the H or the I piece that we'll need. We do need zipper pulls and the top piece, of course, for the front as well. We will start by making the front pocket. So we will first do the slip pocket. Like I said, I've made markings on the pattern pieces if you like to add a snap button or magnetic snap. I didn't, so I folded this wrong sides together and top stitched the top edge, and then placed the D piece on the C piece, both pieces being right side up. And then I will take the lining piece, the C lining piece right here, and place it wrong sides together with the main piece, and then baste together all 3 layers. Now we will have to prepare the zipper for our front pocket. So you need a zipper that is 40 centimeters long, which is 15 3/4 inches, and thread a zipper pull to the zipper tape. I usually let my zippers be slightly longer and then trim off the excess zipper tape later. So now we will take the E piece and fold the long edges towards the center and give it a press. Therefore, it's easier if you mark the center line and fold the long edges towards the center and give it a press. If you use fabric that can't be ironed or heated up, you could also use some double-sided tape. After pressing, fold together again, so you do have 4 layers on top of each other. Secure it with some clips, and then we will place the zipper tape inside this fold. It's important that if you take your zipper tape with the zipper attached, that your zipper will close towards the left. Zipper is closing towards the left, and then attach this strip of fabric on the top edge of the zipper tape. When all the clips are attached and if everything's secured, top stitch all the pieces together. Top stitch right here. Now I trim the excess zipper tape and take the F piece. The F piece needs to be right side up. Both pieces are right side up. Then place your assembled zipper right side up on the right side of the F piece, so it's the top edge of the zipper is centered on the F piece. Fold the fabric down so it's like a sandwich. The zipper is sandwiched in between the F piece, and then we will sew the short edges with 1 centimeter 3/8" seam allowance. Turn your gusset right side out and then baste together the open edges. You can also top stitch the sides. I know many of you guys like to do that. I just don't top stitch the side. I just baste together the raw edges of the F piece, but of course that's your bag, your choice. Whatever you prefer, do so, okay? So when the piece is assembled, you can attach your bias tape already to your gusset, or you can do this later if you like to do this the old-fashioned way. I like to attach my bias tape to this gusset. If you need more infos, on the ebook page 7, you'll find a direct link to the binding tutorial. So with my bias attached, I mark all my centers, the top center and the bottom center of this gusset piece. Therefore, I can only make snips into the raw edges. Of course, we don't want to cut into the folds. So I will use some masking tape because I can draw like I want to on the masking tape and nothing will stay on there. If I just remove the tape, all the markings are gone. If you never tried this, I've used so much masking tape in sewing, and it's really helpful and it's really cheap, so it's not pricey. Of course, you can use chalk or a fabric marker, magic marker, to mark your center. It's just important that you do make this marking now because we will need this later if we want to sew our front pocket on our front piece. So when the center is marked, we will attach this piece to the C-piece. See, this is our assembled C-piece, and we do need to mark our top and bottom center as well. And then we will place the gusset right sides together on the C-piece. The raw edge of the gusset goes onto the C-piece. The zipper raw edge will go to the top and the other center will go to the bottom of the C-piece. I start with the top, then the bottom, and then I will attach the whole thing to the C-piece, and I will make some small snips into the areas where the gusset is above the curves of the C-piece. Take your time for this, make some adjustments, and when you're happy with how the ring sits on your C-piece, baste the pieces together first. I know a lot of people think that basting is so annoying, but honestly, since I baste almost everything before sewing, I don't mess up that much anymore, because especially with those tight curves, it's really hard to hold the correct seam allowance at all times. So it's really easy if you baste it first and then sew a second round with the correct seam allowance of 7 millimeters, a quarter of an inch. When that is done, we can close our bias tape because we've attached it already. If you did not attach it already, now you can do the binding in the way that you like to. But now's the time to hide the raw edges inside the bias tape. I did some small trims on the curves because it was really bulky. And if you do trim your seam allowance here, be careful to leave enough seam allowance that you can easily fold the bias tape over it. See, I just need to pull this up a little bit and then fold the raw edges of the bias to the raw edges of the piece, and then fold over again, secure with clips, and then top stitch, and the raw edges are hidden. Looks pretty, doesn't it? So I usually turn this once and check if I didn't miss any spots or if anything's sticking out like this thread, and then trim it off now. Important thing, make sure your masking tape stays on there from the markings, because we will need the markings to attach it, like I said before. And then massage the zipper a bit over the bounded edge. Is that correct in English? Bound, is that the past? Excuse my bad English. Sometimes it's just hard for me to do this in English since German is my native language. Okay, looks good. So open up the zipper again, watch out for the top masking tape, and then take the front piece and the template that I've provided you in the pattern pieces, because we will draw the edges of the template to the right side of our front piece. Align it 2 centimeters from the bottom, 3/4 of an inch from the bottom, and centered. So do not forget to mark your centers. Of course, it will be easier to do this all at the beginning, but I forgot. I always forget, to be honest. So 2 centimeters, 3/4 of an inch from the bottom. Here I've used some masking tape, but then I realized, well, we do have curves and we want to draw the curves on there correctly. So I suggest you to skip this masking tape, but you can do so, of course. And you have a straight line on the bottom already, and you can draw the marking on the piece on the masking tape. But you do need some chalk or fabric marker to draw the edges of the template and the center marking as well, because we will align the center from the zipper of our front pocket to the top center that we just made and the bottom center as well. So take some pins and attach it. If you use faux leather or vinyl, of course this is a bit harder, but you could also use some glue or some tape, but it's of course not as stable as if you would use these needles, these pins. So before we start sewing, please check if the drawing of the template outlines are correct. So I will just form out my front pocket gusset and place it along the curves, and then I, like in this case, I realized it's a bit too wide, my markings. So what I will do in this case, I will rearrange the top and make it a bit shorter, since the gusset piece is too short for my marking here in this case, because the template is just a guide, and depending on how you draw and how you sew the piece together, it can be slightly off. So I will move the top pin and put it down just a millimeter or two, just slightly, and then I will check again if the length of the gusset is the same length as the drawn line that I've made. And now it fits much better without too much pressure. And then I will take it to my sewing machine and simply just baste it on or top stitch it on there. And when you do that, please make sure that the bias, the bound edge, is going into a different direction than your stitches, because we don't want anything to be caught up in our seams. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this at the beginning, since the gusset pieces E and F are not fused with any interfacing, they are much easier to attach, because if you do use interfacing on the E and the F pieces, they are so hard to attach. So please don't. And then I just go along the line, adjusting my piece, and go slow and follow the markings that I make. And then I realized that it's kind of hard to see from this perspective, so don't worry, I will change the perspective of the camera in just a moment so you can actually see the stitching and the needle where it's placed. Okay, this is a much better placement of the camera. I'm still learning every day, so. Okay, now we've reached the top center, so everything's still in order. We followed our drawing. The drawing of the chalk is a bit hard to see here, but if you look closely, you can see the line that I've drawn on there before. And yeah, I just keep on top stitching until I get to the beginning of my stitching. This process might seem very hard, but if you do take your time and keep arranging everything correctly, it's easier than it looks. I always take my time and go stitch by stitch. This is actually sped up a little bit, so this is not real time, but if I would show everything in real time, this video would be hours long. This is not an easy fast make. This is a advanced pattern which takes time and patience, and I really suggest you to do this really step by step. Take breaks, step away from it for a moment before you continue. I usually prepare my pieces like the evening before, and then I just do the front and then make a break and continue like that in your own speed and pace, okay? The front pocket is attached, so it's time to remove all the markings. Of course, you could also do this later if it's not within seam allowance, but I forget a lot of times, so I prefer removing the chalk right now with a wet cloth, and then we can move on to the top zipper pocket. And I know in the written instruction in the ebook it might be hard to see where to start and where to end attaching the zipper tape and everything, so we will make this together now on video, making this easier to see. So place your markings from the pattern piece to the right side of your front piece, and then we will need the zipper tape, which is 26 centimeters long, 10¼ inch, and thread a zipper pull on it, and then we will attach the tabs. So main fabric and zipper are right sides together, and lining is right sides together with the main fabric, so the zipper is sandwiched in between, and then attach the second short end the same way and sew the short edges with 1 centimeter seam allowance, 3/8 inch. Then fold the fabrics wrong sides together and top stitch, so the tabs will stay together and the sides will be top stitched like this. Now mark the center of your zipper, and since we want our zippers to close all in the same direction, make sure the zipper closes towards the left as well, and put it right sides together to the top edge of the piece, and then baste the piece until you reach the markings. So I will take a pen and make a marking on the wrong side of my zipper tabs on both sides, so I know where to stop. And since the curve is kind of hard to sew at the beginning, I will start basting in the center and work myself towards the sides. So you see, I started here and then I start from the center again towards the other side, and I stopped at the marking. So now you will take the H piece, which is smaller than the I piece. See, the slightly smaller piece is the one that we will need right now, and we will mark the center here as well and place it right sides together on the main piece. So put it right side down, align the top center, and we will sew this together with 7mm seam allowance, and I will start at the center again, and just to show you, we will do this together at the sewing machine. So start at the center, 7mm seam allowance, 1/4 inch, and the curve might be tricky, so you push it down, just focus on the piece that is right in front of your needle. So you see this tab is going like outwards a bit, so keep going just until you reach the marking, but the fabric, the lining piece, is following the main front piece, so the tabs will be sticking out here on the sides. I stopped where the marking is, and then I will start at the center again, sewing towards the other side. I know making two seams takes more time than just starting at the beginning and not at the center, but it's just easier. So if you feel secure enough to hold the seam allowance at the correct measurement, feel free to do this. This is just how I do it, and I think it's a lot easier. Again, we will sew until we've reached our marking. The tabs are sticking out on the side, and the fabrics, main and lining from the front and the H piece are aligned. So if you do have a zipper that doesn't fray, which is good quality, Of course, you can make snips into the top curves. If not, please don't, because the zipper might fray and your zipper might be broken. I do this just really small slits here, but if you're insecure about your zipper quality, just skip this part, okay? Then you turn the piece so that the lining is right side up like that, and shape the edges. That's the correct way of saying it. Shape all the edges and then top stitch your zipper so that the lining pieces and the main fabric front piece are stitched together. So zipper is top stitched. Now we can attach the second piece, the taller piece. I hope I didn't get this wrong. See, if you place it on the top edge of the zipper, it should align with the side and bottom edges just right. And then first baste it together. Baste it together with the top edge of the zipper, going slightly over the tabs as well, that everything stays in place. And then again, align the bottom edge and the side edge of the two lining pieces, and then sew them together with 1 centimeter seam allowance, just like that. So the front pocket lining is done, and now we can attach the top. So we have the main fabric piece and we need to mark the center, and we also need to make small slits into the inward curve here. But I show you right here, you make small snips into the fabric. Make sure they're just small enough that they are within seam allowance. Place it right sides together with the zipper aligned by the top center, and then again I will baste it and I will start at the center again. So this is the center, and I will baste this really close to the edge. And as you can see, the curve of the top piece will go in a different direction than the zipper. So just focus on the piece that is right in front of your needle, and then slowly adjust the fabric to the zipper curve of the front piece. And don't worry about the last few millimeters of this thing, because it will be cut off anyways. Then turn and then sew from the center again towards the side, adjusting the top piece to the main front piece slowly, step by step, stitch by stitch, and don't worry about the last millimeters because we will trim this off. When that is done, now sew from the start. Since we've basted it together, nothing can happen. And then sew with a 7 millimeter seam allowance, 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. It's basically the same edge will be sewn now with the correct seam allowance. I'm sorry for the camera shake. And finally, top stitch the top piece in place. So the seam allowance is going upwards. So because of course top stitching means we will attach the seam allowance from the zipper to the top and then top stitch. So the front is almost done. We just need to attach the backing for the front, and we need to trim off the extra tabs on the side. And as you can see, the zipper already is sitting upwards a little bit, and that's exactly what we wanted to achieve. So we will take the slip pocket and place the main and the lining, or the two lining pieces, right sides together, and sew them with 1 cm seam allowance, 3/8 inch, but we will leave an opening at the bottom edge. Then trim off the corners and turn your pocket right side out and give it a press. So I've made this one main piece without interfacing, without deco-filet, just the H250 interfacing, and one lining piece, but of course you can use 2 lining pieces. I give it a press and top stitch the top edge. This is the opening, and then I will place it on the backing 2 centimeters, 3/4 inch from the bottom and centered, and stitch it on there. And I will also divide this pocket in the center. You can divide it wherever you like, just don't make it too big a compartment, because then it will be like floppy. I hope you know what I mean. And now it's time to place these 2 pieces wrong sides together and baste them together. So the front piece might be slightly taller than the backing, and then you need to adjust it on the side tabs and maybe make a small fold and push the top down a little bit so everything's aligned perfectly. But this is only like small millimeter wise. It always depends on how your seam allowance, everything fit together for the top zipper, and if the zipper is really sitting on top of the piece. See here, I make like a teeny tiny small fold it down a little bit, and the other side as well. It's just really just a millimeter in this case. And then I will baste the 2 pieces together within seam allowance, and then trim off the tabs that stick out on the sides. You're done with the front now. That was quite a hard part, and I really suggest you to take a break if you haven't taken any breaks now, and then start fresh on the next part, which will be the back. Here you can see all the pieces that we need for the back. With the flap, with the main opening, we do need some zipper tape and some tabs for the main flap. We do need webbing pieces and some shorter webbing pieces for the connectors. This is the main back piece. We do have an interior zipper pocket on the flap. And this is the flap itself and the cover to cover up the straps. We do need some zipper pulls as well. And now we will start with the interior zipper pocket in the flap. So you need to draw a rectangle on the wrong side of the facing. The easiest way to do this is just the centered 1 centimeter, the centered 3/8 inch, but you can also take the measurements from the pattern piece itself. Just transfer the markings on the wrong side to the facing, and then you will take the lining piece for the flap, the back flap, and measure 4 centimeters, 1.5 inches, and place this right sides together and sew the rectangle. The facing is centered and 4 centimeters from the top edge. And just stitch along the drawn rectangle that we've just made on the wrong side of the facing. Now the 2 pieces are connected with each other, and we will cut the center line, but not all the way. As you can see on the pattern pieces, there are 2 V-shaped slits into the corners. Be very careful with that. Make sure not to cut into the seam, into the stitches, but cut as close into the corner as possible. Next, push the facing through the hole and shape all the edges and the corners And I really suggest you to press this if you can. If you have fabric that can be pressed, press it so everything stays in place. Next, we will prepare our zipper. The zipper is the short one, the 17 centimeter long zipper with zipper pull attached. Place it on the lining. Both pieces are right side up, and sew the top edge with a 7mm seam allowance. Then fold the fabric away from the zipper and repeat with the second lining piece. 7mm, a quarter of an inch seam allowance, and then fold the fabrics away from the zipper. So the zipper is closing towards the right, the fabric is wrong side up, and the zipper spiral is right side up, and you place the gap on the flap lining piece on top of the zipper and align it on the sides. Then top stitch a rectangle around the zipper coil. Then fold down the upper lining piece and trim any excess fabric off on the bottom. And then sew the two lining pieces together with 1 centimeter seam allowance, 3/8 inch seam allowance. I also trim off the extra zipper tape because my zipper is always a tiny bit longer than on the pattern request. So now the zipper pocket is finished, and we will take care of the main zipper closure. So we need a long piece of zipper tape, 54 centimeters long, 21¼ of an inch long, and then thread 2 zipper pulls to the zipper tape and attach the tabs just the same way as we did before with the other zipper for the front. You sew this edge then with 1 centimeter seam allowance, 3/8 inch seam allowance. See, the zipper is sandwiched in between the main and lining tab piece. Then next, fold the fabrics away from the zipper so they are wrong sides together, and top stitch so everything will stay in place. Now mark the center of the zipper, and we will first baste it onto the main fabric flap piece, right sides together. So mark the center, then mark the center on your back flap. Put it right side up in front of you and place the zipper right sides together on it. First connect the center, then the bottom on one side, and work your way up towards the center, attaching the zipper tape with clips. If you have a zipper that can be snipped, make sure it's not fraying. If you have a good quality zipper, it should be okay, but just make very small snips into the zipper tape. And then repeat the other side, work your way from the bottom towards the center. Arrange the whole zipper on the flap piece and then baste the zipper on the main fabric. So nothing can be rearranged, everything will stay in place like that. Now you take the assembled lining piece with the zipper attached, put it right sides together with the main fabric, align it by the center, the top center, use some clips to secure everything in place, and then you would have to sew the two pieces together with 7mm seam allowance, 1/4 of an inch. When you do that, just focus on the piece that is right in front of your needle, and when you get to the curvy part where the zipper is, make sure that you push your zipper tape down so there are no wrinkles or folds in your way. Now, again, I don't suggest you trimming off too much of the zipper, just a teeny tiny bit. And you have to make sure your zipper is made for that. So if you have a zipper that frays easily, do not trim the top curve, okay? Then you can turn your back flap right side out and shape all the corners and curves and edges nicely. I do finger press it just with my fingers. And then top stitch your zipper. right here, top stitch. Looks good. Next we can attach the zipper to the back piece, the main back piece. Therefore, make sure all the centers are marked on the top and the bottom. So on the inside curve, we will attach the zipper to the inward curve, and also mark the center on the lining piece as well. So don't get this like twisted up. You place it on there like this and fold it up so you can align the center marking of the zipper and the back piece right sides together. And this can be a bit confusing because you have these long legs of this piece, but if you do it slow, you won't get anything mixed up. Make some small slits into the fabric where the inward curve goes, and then align the whole zipper tape to these, can you say legs? I guess you know what I mean, right? Start again at the bottom and work your way towards the top center, and we will like straighten the zipper tape along we go with our stitching, because now we will, I forgot to snip that off. First we will baste it in place so everything will stay where it should stay. Now the pieces are basted together, and I know this might look a bit confusing. What is front, what is back? But it's like, I first did this wrong. I wanted to start at the bottom, but this is kind of hard to see then, because you need to attach the inward curve and not the outer edge of the piece. So place it like this, put the flap out of the way, place this right sides together, aligned by the center marking of the inward curve, the inside of the piece. Make small slits here as well, and then work your way till you get to the bottom. See, this was confusing, but you need to stick it through the hole. Come on, Sarah, stick it through the hole, the leg through the hole, and then it's right like this, you can see. So start at the bottom again, work your way up until you get to the top marking. I've made this a lot quicker, so don't worry about like doing this slower. And then you will sew this edge with 7mm seam allowance, 1/4 of an inch. Now the pieces are sewn together, so it's time to fold our fabric's wrong sides together. Again, finger press it, shape the edges, and then top stitch the two pieces together. But very important, do not top stitch the outer edge together, just top stitch the zipper first. We will do this later because we will still need to attach our back straps and we don't want to go our stitches through the lining piece. So just top stitch the zipper, the inward curve. You see, the clips are still there because I did not baste the whole piece together, just this one edge. See if your zipper closes nicely. And now we can attach our straps, our main webbing pieces. So therefore you need to fold down the lining on the top so that it won't get caught in any stitching. Then you will mark a line, or you mark two lines to be correct. One 5 centimeters from the top, which is 2 inches, and the second line will be 3 centimeters from the top edge, which is 1 inch. And the reason why I do this is because I can just go crazy with my basting on my webbing, and this will be the parts that will be covered by the strap cover, so you don't have to worry about how your stitches will look. We won't see them later because we will cover them up. This is like a safe area where you can just baste. Also mark the center. Like here I use masking tape, so I just draw it on my masking tape. This is the center, and then I will take the 2 pieces of webbing that are 1 meter long. I think that's 44 inches. And then I will put them on an angle like that, as you can see. So you will have like a V-shaped gap in between those 2 webbing pieces, like a slim V shape, if you can see this. And then I will baste it on there with lots of stitches, and then remove the markings. And now it's time to place the cover above, and therefore we've interfaced this with Decofill strip, and you can simply fold the edges over the Decofill, use the Decofill as a guideline on how to fold this. You could also use double-sided tape if that's more comfortable for you. I just like to save some money. And then we place it above it so all the stitches are covered. Make sure that the cover is straight. If you need to, just snip off some like fraying or some like the corner, if it would be sticking out, you could also trim that off a tiny bit. And then place the cover above. Make sure it's straight, so if you align it to your cutting mat, it's easy to see if it's straight. And then top stitch your cover over all the basting stitches. Looks like a nice and clean finish. Now we can fold the lining piece up again and then do the basting. And now the 2 pieces are basted together, and you can trim the extra cover, the strap cover on the sides. And we will attach the connectors to the bottom of the back piece. So therefore we need the 2 pieces of the short webbing, and we will thread squaring and align the short ends like this and baste them together. Now you can take the rectangle piece and place it centered and sandwich it in between this fold. So the fabric is right side up. Place the webbing piece in the center fold. Secure with clips and sew together with 1 centimeter 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I've made some extra stitches just to for safety, that everything will stay there even though you have a heavy backpack. Now you turn the fabric right side out and top stitch. Remember to do this mirrored. So this won't be mirrored. If you turn it, you have them mirrored. So like this, and top stitch. Now place it on the back piece from the bottom edge 2 centimeters from the bottom edge like this. Use your mat to align this. If you work with inches, it will be 1.5 inches from the bottom edge and baste in place. So the back piece is done. Looks good. Let's continue with the sides and the top. So these are the pieces that we will need for the side. We do have the handle. I like to insert some Vigo fill in there. You could also use Decofill if you like. We do have our side pieces from main fabric and the pockets and the top piece. So we will start with the side pockets. Therefore, align the main and lining fabric right sides together and sew the top edge with 1 centimeter seam allowance. Then fold the fabrics away from each other, finger press the seam, and put the fabrics wrong sides together and top stitch the top edge. Next, we will align the bottom edges of the side and the side pockets. Both pieces are right sides up. And we will start with the bottom and then work our way up, aligning the raw edges. And the reason why we do this kind of L shape first is because we don't want this to be like not straight, and it's easier to do it like that. So because now you can align the other edge and then check again if the top edge of the side pocket is straight, and then baste the other edge and repeat with the second side piece. Now we will make the handle. So the top and the bottom have different widths. So the bottom is slightly wider because we do want this to be sticking out on the sides just for a nice contrast. So I mark the center line and fold the edges towards the center. You could also use double-sided tape for this. I like to use clips, and then I will repeat this with the top handle piece, but I will insert the Vigo-Fill. You could also fuse Deco-Fill-Lite, and it's slightly smaller than the half width of the top piece because it's easier to fold it over the edge if you have a little gap. And then I will place it on top, aligned by the center. So the first thing I do is I do this like kind of roughly, like eyeballing it to hit the center. And when I've attached the whole piece, I will check again and make corrections and rearrange my clips so both pieces lie centered above each other and the open edges are hidden in the center. You see, no open edges on the top and the bottom, and then I've just top stitched it. Now we will take the top piece, main fabric, make a marking 3 centimeters, 1/4 of an inch from the straight edge of the piece and align it there. So you can align it also on the side edge, or you can have this stand over for 1 centimeter. It depends on how much you want your handle to be, how close you want the handle to be to the top. So if you want like a tight grip there, you let it stand over for about 1 centimeter or 3/8 inch. Next, I'll make a marking on my masking tape here, or you can do this with chalk on the piece, 2.5 centimeters from the edge, from the side edge, or 1 inch from the side edge. And I will sew a rectangle right next to the stitches of my top stitching. So I don't want the stitches to be overlapping because it's hard to stitch into the same seam. So I do it like a millimeter next to it for a nicer and cleaner look. And then when I've reached my marking, I go to the side and back down. So I've created a rectangle like that. Now I go back down again, making sure it's right next to the top stitching. Important, now thread 1 D-ring on there. Don't forget that. And then I will stitch a second rectangle right above the D-ring, which is 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch centimeters tall, and therefore I will make a marking on my masking tape again so I know how tall my stitching has to be. So if you sew the rectangle here, again make sure it's right next to the top stitching from the handle itself. Go as close to the D-ring as you can. The tighter the D-ring will sit in the handle or on the handle, is that correct? Now we will attach the other edge, but therefore don't forget to thread the D-ring on before you start, okay? So again, we have the 3 centimeter, 1/4 inch from the straight edge, from the straight top edge. And then we will make a marking here again because we want our first rectangle to be 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters tall as well. Like I said, I let the edge of the handle stand over the edge a tiny bit. You don't have to do this. If you want a longer handle, you can align it to the raw edge. You see, I've stitched a rectangle like I did before. Put the D-ring down, make my marking to 2.5 centimeters, 1 inch, and stitch the second rectangle. So now we have both D-rings attached to our handle, and for the look and for some more stability, I will add 2 rivets. So if you add the rivet close to the side edge, make sure that you leave enough space for the seam allowance because we will connect this to the sides. And if you put the rivet too close to the edge, it will get caught in the seam allowance, so we don't want this. So make this first one really close to the D-ring, but do not make it through the stitches. And then punch your holes like the top rectangle, like the inward rectangle. I place the rivet like centered, and the other one is a bit more upward, so there's enough room for our seam allowance later on. But it's also a question of looks, so you can place it wherever you like as long as it's not caught in the seam allowance and if it's not going through the top stitching. I hope that makes sense, because I always say this is just a suggestion. It's your bag and you make your bags however you like, okay? So this is the finished top piece, but it's still missing the lining piece. So then place the lining piece wrong sides together and baste the 2 pieces together, wrong side on wrong side. Baste within seam allowance. Now we will put this together with the side piece. So make sure the curved edges align with the curved edges and the straight edges with the straight edges. So because the curves are where the front is gonna be. So place the 2 pieces right sides together, the top and the side, and sew this then with 1 centimeter seam allowance. But first place the side lining piece on top, so the side main and lining pieces are right sides together and the top piece is centered in between this. You can see how the curve is flowing from the sides to the top. And then fold the fabrics wrong sides together and top stitch this side and baste the 2 pieces together in one step, and then attach the second side piece exactly the same way. Then mark the centers and your top and side piece is finished. This is so much quicker than the front, right? So let's take a break now, okay? Are you ready to move on? Because this step is kind of hard. It's the final assembly, and attaching the side piece to the front and the back is okay, but like attaching the bottom at the end is kind of hard, to be honest. We will do the easy parts first. So take the front and make sure that the curved edge of the side top piece is aligned with the front. So you know this, right? Like we did the whole time. We will align the top center, then the bottom, and work ourselves towards the center. If you like to, you can make some small slits into the curvy sections for an easier attachment. And then I will baste this first, but this is kind of hard because you would have to open up a seam allowance again from the basting stitch. So if you can, I suggest you to sew this right away with the correct seam allowance of 1 centimeter, 3/8 inch. And the reason why is, you see here, I've basted it together and I have to open up the bottom 3 centimeters because I will fold the seam allowance open for a less bulky hack to attach the bottom later. But if you watch this whole video from final assembly first, then you will know what I mean. So maybe watch it first before you start making that, okay? It's just a suggestion, because now we will use our bias tape to hide the raw edges with binding. So therefore, make a marking on the bottom 3 centimeters from the bottom edge. Mark like on the seam allowance 1/4 of an inch from the bottom, because we will close our binding only from this part, okay? So the bottom 3 centimeters, do not bind them, but let the bias tape stand over the edge a little bit, but start stitching where the marking is. So we will start our stitching here. So the bias tape is underneath the piece. Align the raw edges and just keep on stitching like where the correct seam allowance was before, and then attach the bias tape to the whole edge until you get to the second marking again, and stop where the marking is. So here's the second marking right there, and we will stop our stitching when we get to the marking and lock our stitch. Now it's time to close our bias tape. So we will fold the bias tape over the edge, fold over and attach with clips, and just do this from where your stitching has started and ended, and then I will show you in detail how we're gonna finish the ends. So now we're at the point where this is open. So fold your seam allowance open, use a clip to keep this in place, and then fold the bias tape, the edges, to so you don't have raw edges, just to the inside, and place it over the open edges that are folded apart to hide them. And when it comes to stitching, we will stitch the bottom edge first and then start closing our bias tape, the top stitching about where the marking is. You see, I folded the edges towards the center and then place it right above the open folded seams, and then I will baste the end of the bias tape first, like right here, and then I will start here and top stitch the whole bias until I get to this point. By doing this, we will avoid bulk, because it's gonna be hard to attach the bottom anyways, and if we can save some bulk there, it's quite helpful. So if you haven't tried this hack, try it. If you do have an industrial, maybe it's not as important, but most of us sew on regular sewing machines, not industrial sewing machines. So the front is connected to the top and the side pieces now, and next we will attach the back. And this is done in exactly the same way. Make sure to put your webbing together so you won't get caught in the stitches, and simply repeat the whole process. Attach it centered first, then work your way to the center, So with 3/8 inch 1 centimeter seam allowance, attach the bias in the same way and close the bias in exactly the same way as we did with the front. And the main body is almost completed except for the bottom pieces that we need to attach to our main piece. Open up the main zipper closure and mark all your centers, and then we will start preparing the bottom simply by putting the main and the lining fabrics wrong sides together and baste them together first. And when you attach this, it's important that you pay attention what is the front and what is the back, because the more curved side is attached to the front and the more straighter edge is attached to the back. So this edge is the front, this is the back. So align it to the correct center marking. And take your time for this. So if you start attaching the centers first, work your way around the whole piece, do the front and the back center first, and then take your time by arranging the bottom to the edge from the main piece. If you need to, make small snips for a nicer fit, and then baste it together first. And then afterwards, when you've basted the pieces together, the correct seam allowance is 1 centimeter and 3/8 inch. And then close the raw edge with binding, and then you're done. I know this is hard, especially if you use like thicker fabrics like vinyl. Like my bottom piece here is vinyl, and the main piece is from waterproof canvas. So it's actually okay. I don't have an industrial machine, but maybe you need to change to a thicker needle for this part. I use, like, especially when the bias is on top, when the bias is closed, I like to use denim needles because they're really thick and they get through everything. I also have a very powerful machine, so it's not like a regular household sewing machine. But you know your machine best, so you know if it's capable of all these layers or not. So when the bottom is connected and the bias tape is attached and closed, you can turn your backpack right side out, best moment ever, and then shape out everything, the curves, the edges, look for some threads hanging out, snip them off, and all that is left to do is to use the sliders for your webbing pieces to assemble your backpack finally. So just the straps, then you're done. So therefore you need your 2 sliders. So thread the end of the long piece through the slider, then go through the squaring. Make sure nothing's twisted. You go from the top to the bottom through, and then underneath the webbing you thread the end of the webbing underneath the webbing, and then fold the end over and sew this together. The 2 center pieces, you sew them together by sewing a rectangle. Repeat this on the other side, and then you're done. You're really done. And take a good look at what you did. You did this all by yourself. And it's amazing what we can do, right? If you just like patience. I know this thing has a lot of pieces, and it's an advanced make, but it's something you can be really proud of. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Maybe you've learned something new. I would really love you to stop by my Facebook group. It's called Social Bagmakers, and show me how you use that pattern and what you did. So I always love to see finished pictures. If you're not on my Patreon yet, I would love you to join. You can discover so many back sewing tutorials, patterns, everything, or just simply visit my Etsy shop if you like to shop for individual patterns. I had a blast showing this to you, and I had a lot of fun constructing this. I hope you're happy and I hope to see you soon again. Bye!